What's up, world? It's the Mill, and we back in the building. I want to say peace to all of the children, hoping they grow up into making some millions, realizing it's just my opinion. So if you're tuning in, we know you're wrapped up in feelings. All right, I'm trying to get my broadcasting going right and everything all tight before we start talking about Martin Luther the King Jr. But I think it's together. We going live on YouTube while we on the Zoom. I can still hear myself in the background. Yeah, that's not cool. All right, so we're gonna try to roll with it and flow with it and get in tow with it, get lock and toe with it. But Martin Luther King Jr. It's interesting to note that he was born Michael Luther King Jr. And it's it's the milling. We back in the building. I want to say peace to all of the children, hoping they grow up into making some millions, realizing it's just my opinion. So if you tune in, get wrapped up. All right. So here now we back at it again. Had to just figure some things out. We was having technical difficulties. But one thing I want people to realize his birthday is on the 15th of January. And we have to keep that in mind because as we in the age of information and time continues to move on, history gets changed. Dates get confused. And the thing about it is, with the internet, we have the ability to correct things. We need to correct things. It's not cool to get something wrong and to roll with that. To roll with it because everybody believe it. It's a lot of blind following the blind type of mentality today. A lot of times people will say just roll with something just because everybody's doing it. This is like why you want to upset things, messing with people's ego, letting them know they got it wrong. But if I'm getting it wrong, baby, I want to learn how to get it right. So we can be all tight. So getting to it, um, Martin Luther King, born Michael King Jr. He was born January 15th, 1929. And it's interesting, because we have we have a few historical people that's born in this month, January. Um, Martin Luther King. Here's what's interesting too. Martin Luther King was born 7 days after the Honorable Noble Drew Ali, who was born January the 8th. And he was born in the same year the Honorable Noble Drew Ali died. And I want to say he was born 6 months ahead of when the Honorable Noble Drew Ali died. So when you're looking at like Black leaders and our chronology, I think those type of things are important, especially if you claim to be religious or spiritual, because you need to see which leaders came in transition with the other one. If you're spiritual, you got to see that as a spiritual sign. Martin Luther King being born the same year as the Honorable Noble Drew Ali died. Right? That's an interesting thing, man. And I don't have time to get into Noble Drew Ali today. And do your research and do the Google. Right now, we're talking about Martin Luther King. But we're going to reference other leaders because I think when we analyze our ancestors, we have to analyze them in the context with each other. Right? So, Martin Luther King born Michael Luther King. I think it's interesting his name is Michael because Michael is like, that's like a prophetic name. Those are like special names like Michael. Michael means teacher, right? Michaels are leaders. It's a trip, man. You got a lot of Black Michaels that have been phenomenal, right? In this American society, in this American paradigm, right? In the 20th century, and the making of the technological America. When America became a nation where everybody is connected. When you had the TV, when people started becoming famous, Michaels had played a role in that. And I'm bringing this up because it's all leading to something, even to where we are today. I mean, before the television era, it was hard for somebody to get famous. They had to get infamous. Right? After the television era, more things can get broadcasted. I mean, more people can get famous, right? And you got Michael Luther King, turn into Martin, Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan, Michael Tyson, right? you know. So, and all this is important, man, because we connect the dots. A lot of y'all might, what does this have to do with Martin Luther King? It has a lot to do with him. But before we even get to that, because there's layers to this. And I don't want to be too long, but you can talk hella long about Michael Luther King. But Martin Luther King, the more time has moved on, the more polarizing he's gotten. The more polarizing he's gotten. The generation that grew up with him and kind of right after him, or before I even go there, when you look at polarizing and you look at twinning and patterns, Martin Luther King's counterpart was Malcolm X, who kind of came out of the tree of Noble Drew Ali. If you do the research with it, the Honorable Noble Drew Ali, and that's spiritual too, because if you believe in God or the ancestors or Allah Dumare or Jesus or Jehovah, Yahweh, Allah, then you know that God always brings a metaphor with things or a spiritual metaphor. So that's spiritual, man, for, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X to have kind of like the opposite sides of a coin in their message. Martin Luther King on the surface talked about peace. Malcolm X talked about militancy. I won't even say he preached violence. He preached self-defense, right? So that right there gives us a total picture. It gives Black America a total scope. It gives the world a total scope when you see two sides of the same thing, basically. right? And so the people of Martin Luther King's generation that lived during this time, a little bit after, a lot of them felt like Malcolm needed to come to the way of Martin Luther King. And you would see it on the walls. Most Black American households had three pictures. It was uh, Martin Luther King, JFK, and Jesus Christ. And some people have likened Martin Luther King to the Moses of Black people, but he's more like the Jesus of Black people. With the death and the sacrifice and the person he's linked to. He was also linked to John F. Kennedy for a lot of different reasons, and we'll check into that too, right? But I say that to say, Black folks wouldn't put Malcolm X up on their houses. Most of them would, or after that time period. But then the more things moved along, and the television era expanded, and we had more access to information. You had the Malcolm X movie come out. People start reading on Malcolm. Then Martin Luther King becomes polarizing because a lot of people say, well, man, I agree more with Malcolm. Martin Luther King was kind of compromising to white establishment, right? So this is where Martin Luther King becomes polarizing. And the sad but intriguing part is Martin Luther King, and throughout the generations, man, has went from like hero to sellout. Some people would call him a sellout. He's went to hero to villain of the Black people. He's been villainized in some ways. Then he comes back around full circle to being a hero. So I think all of that is interesting in analyzing our ancestors, because I think what we need to do, the main thing we need to do, it's not about making them a sellout. It's not about even making them heroes. They are heroes and legends, but you have to get past that part and really get into studying them and studying the message. And this is how we can learn from people like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and get the full picture and understand what about their journey applies to today. How did it affect today? They say if we don't understand the past, we will repeat the same mistakes. But I also say is, you can go back in past and learn some solutions and learn, you can learn things that they did that worked. And we could also learn about things they might have should have done that was there for them to do. We can actually look at the mistakes they made, and when it comes to our situation, avoid it, make a different decision. Right. So to me, it was a spiritual echo of Martin Luther King, what happened at the Capitol. Uh, I think it was last week. Anyway, time moves. You had all the white folks, all them Trump supporters. It wasn't even just white folks, but all them Trump supporters basically, try to attempt a coup of the U.S. government. Man. That was echoes of the Civil War, all type of stuff, but it was also echoes of Martin Luther King, and a lot of people can't really see it, see the connection of it, but it really is. It's intriguing when you analyze it, because that happened in the age of the internet. This happened in the age of the internet. Everybody was able to see that, see it on display. And one of the things that Martin Luther King was effective at, that made him effective, is he understood television. He was one of the first people to understand the power of TV. So he knew when he did them demonstrations that when the police get out of line, the American government was going to be on display. See, America calls itself a country where all men are created equal, where we have rights and freedoms, and this is a brand. You got to realize government is business. World trade, UN. This is all about doing business with each other, right? So if your brand is everybody is equal, and we fight for freedom, and you're over here treating Black American citizens like this, and it's on television, this hurts your relations on the world stage with other countries. His films, with Germans talking about, man, look at how you do in Birmingham. I forgot that film with Bruce Willis, where, but it was an interesting diatribe or analogy, right? So, and that's a big cookie to chew on too. Just that whole, because it's kind of sinister. It's kind of sinister, and you can be critical of Martin Luther King for doing that because he sacrificed a lot of people, a lot of our people, to do that, right? He's a Capricorn, and see, and when I talk, I'm talking from metaphysical, spiritual, and academic premise, right? So I represent it all, right? So, Capricorns have a lot of the Joker energy in them, the trickster. What you see on the surface is not always what it is. I mean, him and Muhammad Ali is 2 days apart. Muhammad Ali be acting wild and crazy just to throw you off. Martin Luther King, setting the U.S. He set the U.S. up to get embarrassed. That is a very militant, and it's on the strategy is militant and it's sinister, and it's like letting them walk into a trap, right? I'm gonna read y'all a quote, and this kind of speaks to that. You know what I'm saying? This kind of speaks to that, man, because one of the things about it is it's about being on the right side of history. That's one of the biggest victories, even if you lose, right? He says, I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality. I'll read that again. I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality. This is why right temporarily defeated is stronger than an evil triumph, an evil triumph. So, that's like the man, that's like the man, that's like somebody enticing a millionaire to strike him so he can get one of his companies. It's like, man, that was a sinister strategy, man. And that speaks to it. He said, what did he say? He said, then the evil triumphant, right? It's temporarily defeated by evil triumphant, So it's like you can expose people. He exposed the American government and their hypocrisies. And you can't do business with a government like that. And so this is why I say what happened at the White House, at the Capitol, that stage coup was like echoes of Martin Luther King, because another part of it is the propaganda machine. This is how race is really waged. This is where the battle with racism is waged in a lot of ways. This is where it's waged. It's waged in media and beliefs, right? Part of it's right. Part of it back then was waged in the laws. It was waged in the laws, but it's waged in media and beliefs. So the propaganda machine, like in newspapers, school books, was that Black people are subhuman from everybody else. This is the stuff that they taught, you know, and this would justify their hypocritical laws. You can treat Black people this way because they ain't human like us or human like anybody else. And they made these laws about other. I mean, they made this propaganda about other people, but this propaganda was coming out since slavery because the contradiction is there. How can you make it legal to enslave a group of people and you're saying all men are created equal? So they got to say, well, technically these aren't men; these are half a men, 3.3 fifths of a human being. right? They had to come out with books and things like that. And the thing about it is even after the Emancipation Proclamation, even after laws changed, they still had these beliefs. You got schools that are named after people who wrote these beliefs, educational uh, uh, places of education, facilities of education, institutions that teach our youth are named after people like Horace Mann, and they named after racists who taught that black people were inferior or we're prone to be criminals, right? So Martin Luther King used the camera and the television to expose the hypocrisy in the 60s. And what you saw at the Capitol, they can no longer say black people are like this, black people are that. They can no longer point to one dumbass thing a black person does and say, look, they can no longer take an athlete and say, look, this is black people. You know what I'm saying? Like they can't take a Michael Vick or some black dude that hit a girl, some black athlete that hit a girl and say, look, they can no longer do that because look at what your people just did to your own capital, right? Just because the vote didn't go your way, they were exposed. That propaganda machine that's hundreds of years old is slowly starting to corrode, right? And slowly starting to corrode. And I think, and that's what I was talking about with the technological era, because you got to realize the television is forecasting the internet, the broadcast of the television, the broadcast of the TV, forecasted the internet. Right, Martin Luther King utilized this, right? But then it also symbolizes a bringing of the world together and platforms where people can get their message out worldwide. And Martin Luther King was one of the first people to really take advantage of this. You know, so I think we need to look back at our ancestors, their strategies would work. Now, getting to some critical stuff of Martin Luther King or about him, and why people criticize him, and he realized his mistakes. But you have the liberal infiltration, and you got to realize America is amalgamating. It's still figuring itself out. It's still learning about the people that's inside of it. And I'm talking about analyzing America from a whole, right? There were things that black people could do to get away with, and still can today, because America is still learning. Man, America is a slow learner in a lot of different ways. Why do you think we have to keep explaining to people about black people? That's one of the craziest things to me. We still feel the need to tell the world that this is what black people are like, and we've been in this country since its inception, before its inception, right? So but America still amalgamating, right? And one of the things America learned with Martin Luther King and it adapted to is that black people are very influential. Black people are like lightning rods. We can influence the world, you know. Like we are music in itself. You know how music can get everybody in it. The black man and the black woman uh, is very charismatic. It has the glow, like how they say in The Last Dragon, we have the glow, right? So what happened with Martin Luther King is you take that ability to influence and you direct it to where you want it to go. right? So here you have a struggle around equal rights, right? Equal rights. That's all that struggle was about back then, to make sure we have equal rights under the Constitution. And it's something, that era is something that can be utilized in a reparations argument, even besides slavery, because you had black people in the South didn't have the same rights, but paid the same taxes. No taxation without representation, right? So, it was about equal rights, man, us being able to go where we wanted to go. I mean, you had institutional racism on the law books. Black people couldn't do this, and Jim Crow laws couldn't go to certain places. People could refuse business to you because you're black, right? We need to study this era too. But let me stay on my point. This is what it was about. We had our economics and things going, and this is what also forced black people to keep the money in house. And a lot of times, black people would go and buy their own institutions, buy their own. You can read about successful black cities and towns. You know, but You know, the imbalance is that this is why they were burning down a lot of black towns and cities, because we were economically competing, and then the law backs this shit up. They go and bomb Tulsa, Oklahoma, which was in the 20s, and the law backs this up. You know, so we were fighting for equal rights under the Constitution. Constitution, the law is supposed to work for us the same way it'll work for a goddamn parking meter when you get a ticket. The same way it works for you, it works against you when you go to court. It should work for you. When it says the people, when your rights are violated, it should work for you like that, black. And that's what we were fighting for. But then look at what it turned into by them using Martin Luther King. It turned into integration. And to me, that had nothing to do with the price of tea in China. Integration had us sitting with white folks and being, and that's why if you look at Malcolm X and analyzing our ancestors, that's why he kind of got things faster, or he understood things ahead of time. He understood it a little faster than Martin Luther King did when it came on that level. He understood that was the strategy, because Malcolm X living in Boston, living in Detroit and in New York, he had lived Martin Luther King's dream. He was dating white women. He go, in the clubs, there'd be whites and blacks in the clubs in the social scene. Read his book. He talk about it right there. So like he already experienced being around white folks. That's not equality. But you get these liberals, get them involved, and they want to mess up the black economics and steer us towards integration. You just got to think about the integration does not make sense. We want equal rights, right? So that means that I can go to any school I want to go to, and you can't refuse me based on my race. So I have equal rights here. That's discrimination. They turn that into integration and look at it from a real minuscule point of view. The thing we were fighting for is, if we're traveling across the country, like sometimes, man, like you would have to go, if you were staying in a certain city, you might have to go to another city just to go to a restaurant, because none of those restaurants in the city serve black folks. You might have to find a hotel. You might be doing business or traveling to this city, but none of the hotels in that city take black people. So you got to stay outside of the city, right? You got to find a hotel and that's in a whole that type of stuff, man. We had a lot of those type of barriers, and that's what we were trying to lift, so that we could have more. We could just roll and go do as we want to do around the country. But oh, you can't do this and you're black, and we don't. It's not about living in people's neighborhoods, right? Or even going to school with the same people. But if you got a school that's in a certain district and it's close proximity to the house, everybody should have access to that school if they want to. It's like that type of stuff. We were inconvenienced by their laws, man. Right. And it was about that. It wasn't about black folks and white folks holding hands. And so the liberals infiltrated that. Black people fought for all these rights that helped out other races, right? Because if you have discrimination against black people, you got it against everybody else, just on a different degree. So a lot of people took advantage or benefited from what black folks fought for, but then you got this integration and this multiculturalism, and you have a weird mindset that people don't really catch. Like black people stopped black people stopped studying. And what I mean by that is, just because some laws passed doesn't mean that we don't stay political, that we don't stay I don't want to say agitating, but we don't stay involved, right? We don't continue to teach about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. We stopped doing that. I mean, Malcolm X movie came out in 1992, and by 1992, Black America had forgotten about Malcolm X, and that's only 27 years after he died. Young black youth growing up didn't know who Malcolm X was. We wasn't teaching that. We taught them, and we really wasn't teaching about Martin Luther King and what he did and his strategies. We was teaching about integration, using him to teach about integration, right? So these are things to learn about, And Martin Luther King said, "I fear I may have integrated my people into a burning building." But trip on this. He says change does not roll in the wheels of inevitability, but comes through continuous struggle. So that means, it's interesting. You have this picture, and this is another. For we are gonna close soon because I think we talked about some deep stuff. We in the Matrix, we doing the Morpheus, but there's a picture, and it's not really coming all the way through. But I kind of like my face blending with Martin Luther King, though. So it's got its own magic. We're dealing with the light, baby. But there's a picture with Lyndon B. Johnson. It's this picture right here where he's looking at Martin Luther King, got his head turned, and he's looking at him like this with a cold scowl. And the thing about it is, if you study this American society, uh, we're supposed to we're supposed to keep the politicians accountable. You're supposed to have an interaction with the politicians. A great study like Selma, the movie Selma brought out, was Martin Luther King's agitation. Like sometimes, you know, this is what it's going to take to pressure politicians to move. This is why he used the television too. But this is what it's going to take to pressure politicians to make a move, to do the right thing. What a lot of y'all don't realize is that a mayor, a president, a governor, whoever, a supervisor, a councilman, they're not dictators. So what if you're making them upset? If they're not doing the right thing, they're not a king. They're not dictator. They have a job to do. They're voted in by the people. They are voted in by, so they're supposed to be acting on the behalf of the people and not, dictating their own will. So who cares if you're making him upset? And the thing about it is, see, this is why you have racism in America. The system can have institutional laws that are racist, but today a lot of laws have been changed because of people like Martin Luther King. And institutional laws are more subliminal. what's more so racist is society. So, you have departments that's supposed to keep the police accountable or keep the mayor accountable. But if those departments are their friends, then they're going to slack on their job. And so that's societal racism more so than institutional. That's not a law. So the people are they're the last level of accountability. This is why this is a government for the people and by the people and of the people. Right. So the people who factor in, it's your responsibility as a citizen to engage with the president, write him a letter or something, engage with the mayor on your thoughts on how you want the city to be run, right? And take part in how you want your city to be ran. It's not to the politician to do what he want to do, right? And so another way to keep politicians accountable is through media, because media reaches people and you expose them just doing what they want to do, right? Because then, the system cannot be broken, right? Then that means the system is broken. You got politicians doing what they want to do. Nobody's holding nobody accountable. And this is on full display. And then America has a brand to uphold with the rest of the world. But, that would have that happened on the Capitol made America look bad to the world. And this is what Martin Luther King did, and just exposing, their racism when they had police starting riots, and the police were rioting, water hosing and sicking dogs and pregnant women and all that kind of shit, right? So, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. It's more than to cover with Martin Luther King Jr. Also, he might have been born under a certain kind of anointing. He's a child prodigy. Like, he fits a lot of the categories of a prophet. Uh, but he's just a man like anybody else. I don't agree with everything. I'm more of a Malcolmite myself. But analyzing him, I can see, his gifts. They say Martin Luther King would be in the room, about 30 leaders. They all be talking and chattering. He'd be the quietest one until something needs to be said. And he's assessed everything that's been said. And then he was real good at pointing out the direction. After listening to everybody, he had a great strategy with that, man. Capricorns with that Joker energy, they're great strategists. With that, it's the million we got in the building. I want to say peace to all of the children, hoping they grow up into making some millions, realizing it's just my opinion. So if you're tuning in, we don't get wrapped up in the feelings.